for this. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for showing up. We may have a few people that will continue to pop in. I do know a couple registered and are definitely unable to make it, but are hoping to hear this a little bit later. So with that, I want to talk to you guys for a little bit about what I'm doing. I mean, I've got a presentation prepared, but I really want to kind of tell you what's going on with me and what has sort of created this re-energized place in my heart for raising a strengths-based generation. Because really for me, ever since I've been in the strengths world, which goes back honestly into to 2003, becoming an officially certified coach in 2015, I really believe in the language that strengths gives us. So when I talk to people, I always tell them that I speak 3 languages. I speak English, I speak Spanish, and I speak strengths. Because for me, there is truly power in the language that it gives us. And if we can start to teach strengths more as a language and not just a way that we look at people, then I think we have a chance at building something really sustainable. And a couple of years ago, I was able to give a TED Talk, and I did it in Spanish. You may have seen a link out there somewhere. There's a transcription of it into English. And really, it was about changing that mindset of our weaknesses are often our strengths, but how we can use this language to change and have a better future. And it really starts with raising the next generation in this language, in this world of believing in what's right instead of what's wrong. And so my dream kind of came true unexpectedly. I was in the middle of the relaunch of my website. You know, I've got Idea Accelerator down. For me, it's always been about growing ideas. That's where I feel really strong. I mean, I have strategic, activator, maximizer, communication, ideation. You know, I live ideas, and the idea of coaching, I'm not very good at a coach. I'm not good at asking questions and just listening. I have to put my 2 cents in. And so really I've gone away from being a coach and being an idea accelerator, but this little piece of families and language just never really leaves. And aside to that is I really love what Leadership Rhode Island is doing. So Leadership Rhode Island is doing some amazing things. They're becoming a strengths-based state. There's data that says when we implement strengths, there is real change that's possible. And they've only reached about 1% of Rhode Island, which is still pretty impressive considering it's 1 million people. But they've got to get to 10% if they want to affect real change. That's where the tipping point happens. And so there's a new program that's a facilitation certification that I've talked with a couple of you about. I know Sonia for sure. And it's being launched by Sherry Strong, who used to work with Gallup, but is now out on her own with Strengths Genius. And she's partnered with Lori Weir, and they have created this amazing program called Building Strong Communities. And I am going up and I'm going to be a certified facilitator for Building Strong Communities. So I am in the process of getting myself together and getting myself to the US for the end of September for the new certification. And with Building Strong Communities, the model that they have, for me, I know that's going to end up including families here in Peru. And being able to coach in Peru in Spanish is something that I really haven't been able to do very much yet. And families is my way in. So my renewed interest in this is to share this with others who have a similar passion for families, for parenting, and share this model, do some test runs with some families in this 4-week program. It's my Sane You Unleashed program, but now it's going to be applied to parents and children working together side by side, not just aimed at parents. And then seeing if it can even become sort of a train the trainer model where it's not really my forte, but I can help support other coaches that are in this arena and they can use this similar strategy and structure as well. Because I think a lot of times what happens out there in this world, especially for coaches, is we get a little stuck on the how to. You know, we have just enough materials, but creating that program or creating that structure can be a little bit of a challenge. So I want to try to help with that. So how many of you on here actually know the Strengths Explorer 10 talents by chance? Are you familiar with them? They're the Strengths Explorer is the younger one. Becky, you know them?
Familiar. I could not list
Familiar
them.
with them? Couldn't list them. I don't know if I could list all 10. I can get pretty good. I'm going to share my screen really quickly with you guys. I'll probably go back and forth on a couple of things. Share screen. I'm just going to share my desktop. And I'll do this. Go ahead and put it in presentation mode. All right. Now, please feel free to ask a question at any point while I am talking. Not a problem to interrupt. So there are, I need to go, there we go, back to the first one. So there are 10 talents that Gallup has come up with Strengths Explore, and this is for kids from 10 to 14. From 10 to 14, we really want to think of these talents more as domains, because something like achieving could really show up as maximizer, could also be competing in some levels, could be focus once they move into the Strengths Finder place. So we want to be really careful that an achieving child is not necessarily achiever as Strengths Quest, right? And so achieving kids are kids who want to get things done. They're task oriented. They like accomplishing things. And then you have caring kids. And those are the kids who are often taking care of the pets. They're taking care of their elders around them. They're watching after their little brother or sister. They may have a doll that they constantly take care of. These are ways to sort of spot this if your child isn't old enough to take the assessment. There's competing kids. They love to win. They love to compare themselves to others. They are really out there and confident when they're competing. And then there's confidence kids, and those are the kids that kind of go after everything at any moment and love tackling new challenges. And you have your future thinkers, which often look like daydreamers, right? They love to role play. They're always visualizing things. They could look like they're spaced out a little bit when they're really not. And so a great way to connect with your future thinkers is just ask them about their future, ask them what they envision, ask them what they dream about, and they'll get really energized. Dependability kids love to help around the house. They're very responsible. Discoverer kids, obviously those are our learners. They're the ones that are out there with their magnifying glass, looking in the grass at the bugs or digging things up or breaking things apart. They're our learners. And then organizers are the ones who are very methodical. Everything has a place. Everything has to be done a certain way. They're a little bit more meticulous. And the last two categories we have are presence. And those are our kids who are like, hey, here I am. And I can tell you right now, my son has presence. He's 4 years old. He walks into his nido, into his preschool every day. And when he does, he lifts his arms up above his head and he says, here I am, hello. So I have no doubt. And now with the street vendors that we have, he'll roll down his window and he says, hello, how are you? And he starts a conversation with all the street vendors. So super social, really personable. And then you have relating kids. And those are our kids who like to have their friends around. They really like to be social. And it might be just one friend, or it might be a group of friends. So it might be looking at a future relator, or it might be looking at a future woo, right? It just kind of depends on how they use those relating skills. But those play dates are going to be really important for them. So why is this important? And I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. You can see my screen of activator and organizer. So what's important about this? It's important to understand who we are as parents, because we're judging our kids through our own filter, right? And so I have activator. I'm spontaneous. I'm quick. I'm let's go. I don't think about it. I get moving. My son has a tendency to be an organizer. When I go to put something away, I'm like, oh, just set it on the table. And he goes, Mom, can't just set it on the table. It goes over here. Okay, you're right, right? And so like my low discipline, my low, or, anything that's remotely related to this organizer, I am organized chaos. My son knows where things belong. He knows where things go. That definitely comes from his dad. It does not come from me. My husband even said to me the other day, because, you're really messy. You know that, right? You are not telling me anything I don't know. I spent my entire 8th grade year grounded because I didn't clean my room to the level of my father's satisfaction. If that didn't teach me a lesson in 8th grade, do you really think like a year of being punished for it was just like, I got on the bus every Monday morning and everybody went, grounded again? And I go, yep. Didn't clean your room? Yep. I mean, it was known. It was just a fact. So I am just not naturally a neat, organized person. I'm an out of sight, out of mind. So I like having my stacks of things out because it reminds me of stuff being there. So that activator organizer can be a challenge with my child sometimes, but right, there's other ones that can be challenged. We have parents high in discipline, and you have a kid with adaptability. There is probably nothing more frustrating than as a mom or sometimes as a dad, right, to say, what would you like for dinner? And the kid goes, I don't care, whatever. Where do you want to go today? What do you want to do today? I don't know, whatever. I don't care. right? And you're thinking, oh my God, I just wish they would care about something. Now multiply that when you have discipline, right? And imagine that you love structure and routine and making decisions, and you can't, and you have a child who just doesn't care. That causes a lot of friction. But when you know you have discipline and you know they have adaptability, you begin to look at it differently. You create compassion. You find a language to have those conversations and meet each other halfway, right? So that's where I think this need to really understand ourselves as parents first is usually really important. But I'm intrigued in the idea of doing this together with our children and looking at either from a Strengths Explorer age with family, or looking at it from a Strengths Quest age. So Strengths Explorer, as recommended by Gallup, is 10 to 14 years of age to take the assessment. I think if you have an 8 or 9-year-old who's fairly mature, who can more or less understand the questions, they're pretty simple questions, 78 very simple statements. You could go as low as 8 years old, but probably not before that. If they're any younger, you want to be familiar with the 10 terms so that you can look for the patterns and start making some guesses and encourage them. Because when we talk to them in their talent language, we're actually talking to them in their love language. We're going to have an easier time with discipline. We're going to have a more well-behaved child. We're going to have a child that feels more confident, who feels more trusting, who is a happier, just less stressed person in our lives, right? And that isn't always easy. I'm not going to say it's easy, but this is a great way for us to start. And, you know, we have to know that parenting is tough out there. I mean, I think the last time I looked on Amazon, there were well over 50,000 titles just on the, subject of parenting. We're confused. We want to get it right. And there's so much confusing advice out there now that, for me, if we can at least find a language that we can talk together, that's one simple thing we can do, because no family is the same. No child is the same. No adult is the same. And we have to look at this on a case-by-case basis. And the best way to do that for me, again, is through language. So let me go. So one of the other things I managed to create, whoops, let me go back, just escape for a second. Excuse me, pull you guys back up, share my screen again. So I had created a while back a way for us to look at our talents as parents, right? So just 3 examples. If you are a parent with achiever, a short description of that would be: when you are working hard to get a job done, invite your kids to join you so they can see what hard work involves. Use the stamina this theme provides to help you stay at the marathon of parenting. If you're a parent with futuristic, you might see a vision of what your child can be before they do. Cast that vision so they can catch it. To most kids, tomorrow often seems far away. Talking about the future will help tomorrow become a present reality. Competition. You probably won't find a parenting contest, but don't let that keep, you probably won't find parenting as a contest, but don't let that keep you from comparing yourself to another great parent. You can also teach your child how to be a good sport, and that while comparing ourselves to others can be motivating, be sure they are more focused on healthy self-improvement. So these are just ways that we can really tap into our talents. I've done these for all 34. I actually have 1 sheet for about 14 of them. I'm still working on them, but they include things like, with achiever, would be 4 bullet points for you to celebrate as a parent, 4 bullet points that are questions for you to evaluate. Are you getting into your basement? Are you being triggered? Are you not in the best side of your achiever? And then there's a paragraph that kind of says the best role you can play in your family. So this all builds to the You Unleashed model. And that model is 4 weeks spent once a week for an hour at a time, exploring the best of you. We don't look at raw, we don't look at basement, we only really look at what the best of you is. Bree's actually taken this course, so she might be able to speak to it a little bit. But we look at what the best of your talent is. We look at the balconies, we look at your needs, your values, and your contributions. And that's of each particular talent through the theme insights lens. And then with week 2, we begin to explore values and motivations and needs. And I have all of these exercises written out for both parents and for kids so that you can do this together and kind of see where you are and understand each other a little bit more. And then we look at understanding your why. And a lot of times that's for parents. When we think of our legacy, a lot of times as a parent versus just a professional, personal legacy, it really reflects what we want for our kids. And we will look at what we want for our kids that's reflected in our talents, which may or may not be aligned with our kids. So it's a great place to sort of see where our kids see themselves going in the future and see where you want to be and what you want to leave behind, the impression you want, what you want for your children, and compare those notes. And then in week 4, we actually explore those legacies. And then we start talking about family roles and talents and how you're using them productively in the house and what might need to change. And then with this program, so the way this is broken down at this point, this is a beta program for me at the moment, because feedback would be really warranted. I want to see how this works. And I do know that it works as an individual piece, but with families, it might be a little different. And so while this is normally run as $4.99 per person for the 4-week class plus strategy sessions and unlimited coaching with me, this time around, I'm going to do it as $2.99 per family. And that could be both mom and dad and kids. It could be mom and daughter. It could be grandparents and a kid. It could be mom and grandma. Like, I don't care, honestly, what the makeup is. I want people that are part of the ecosystem of that child to be learning about strengths and doing it together. So whatever makes sense for your family from a timing perspective and who can get involved, that is fine by me. It's $2.99 per family. That's the same 4 weeks, 1 hour per week, where we'll get on a call on here on Zoom and talk about, the materials, what it really means, how do we go forward. There'll be a private FB group where you can connect with other families and keep that conversation going. And I think when there's parents of different ages, you say, oh, my 5-year-old's doing this, or my 8-year-old's doing this. And they'd be, oh, my 14-year-old did that too. This is what we discovered. This is what we did, right? So it's a great way to get support parent to parent. And then if your kids are on Facebook, they would be able to potentially participate too with your permission. And then I will also offer one-on-one calls. You'll all have unlimited coaching during the program. So if you have a problem, you can email me, you can set up 30 minutes with me, that's included. But after the program is over, you'll get 3 more one-on-one calls with me as a parent, like as you're developing, to see how this is going. And we'll also do once a month a family group call, like a mastermind, to sort of implement new activities, find new ways to keep you going and moving forward, and see how things are progressing. So that is what is included for this particular project. I'm hoping to start the week of August 6th, the first full week of August. I'll be honest, I had initially considered doing it as a group thing, but I know family schedules can be really chaotic. So honestly, this is going to be sort of a one-on-one family situation, depending on who all comes in, so we have the right amount of time. And do you guys have any questions? How does this sound to you?
Do you have any ideas on what ideal age ranges for your program you think would be? By the way, I think this is incredible value. I think what you're doing is amazing, and I couldn't be more aligned with your dream to have a strengths-based generation. I think that's how we're going to change self-perception and conflict in our world. So anyway, I'm very much aligned.
And you're on my list too, because I really want to be able to gift your cards to families as well, because I think
fun.
Great. Keep things going and keep dialogue going. So I love your dialogue deck.
Thank you.
So that's on my roster for that. I think it's going to be best in this particular case, families with Strengths Explorer or Strengths Quest age. So for me, starting at 8 or 9.
Yep.
I also had a program where initially I was going to work with parents. And so even if you were just talent spotting and your kids were still not old enough to take the test, we could do that. But I think I'm going to structure it a little bit differently, because I'd actually originally created a 12-week program. And so it was these 4 weeks. And then the second 4 weeks was actually teaching parents how to have coaching conversations. So it was how to approach conflict. And we'll still do that, right? So I'll probably create like a once a month type class where we can continue that information as, valuable insight. Because again, 12 weeks is really hard for families to commit. I get it. I have a 4-year-old, school, extracurricular activities, a million things like that. So if we can do this in a way that is flexible and valuable for parents, that's what matters, right? So that stuff will probably come in, and then the rest of it, and then the third 4 weeks was actually, now your child takes the assessment and now we start applying that information that you've had. I want to try it this way, where we actually work together as a family and see if that encourages a few more people in. Because one thing was, I think parents are often willing to spend money on their kids, but not always on themselves.
Hmm.
And if we're going to do this right for our kids, we have to be involved. We can't throw them into a strengths bubble and then not be there to support them in it.
Hmm.
So I think there might be a better chance of us doing it together than to do it separately. So that's where some of this motivation comes from as well. And I am open to thoughts and comments on this, as we move forward to it, because like I said, this is a passion project for me. It's not where I make the most of my money, but with my alignment in building strong communities and the beautiful model that Sherry and Lori have created, I can see this being a bigger piece that begins to make a presence in my life, especially in Latin America, where family is really important. And I think that's going to be one of the best places and highest places we can make impact. So I want to try it in English first before I go over to Spanish, and get good feedback and see what I can do with this. So really, that's my motivation here.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Sonia, did you have a question or thoughts, or Bree? You're on mute, Sonia. Hold on. I'm going to unmute. Okay, there you go. Whoops. Oh.
I don't. It's awesome, okay. And it's fascinating, and we have a particularly challenging well, I shouldn't say that. That sounds so negative, but very different strengths and intense strengths compared to my husband and I. So it's
right.
I think, and he's really he actually will talk about his strengths a little bit, especially his competition, and he really owns that one, and it's so low for my husband and I.
Right, and you and I had to talk about that too, because my son is very high in competition. It's get to the bottom of the stairs first, finish his food first, drink it, and if you drink your drink faster than he drinks his, it can be a full-on meltdown because he didn't do it first.
Absolutely.
And and even his cousin, I hear his cousin go, "It's not a race." And
yes. And with his siblings, that's always his siblings. It's not a competition.
Right. So it's finding that. But here's the other thing I've also found is when we learn this language, and like you said, okay, I probably shouldn't say he's really challenging, right? So we're going to say these things, and it's nice to have a safe space to say them, but it's also really good to recognize this because we can help teachers reframe how they see our children as well, and let them know, hey, he has really high competition. Is there any way you can help, bring this into how he's being taught? Can we incorporate this into energizing him and reframe it? So when they're stubborn, right, then they're really focused. If they've got high presence and they love being social, hey, what are the opportunities for him to be a leader in the classroom? What is an opportunity for him to socialize or, bring people together? So we can really use this language and what we know as a reframe as well, not only for ourselves, but for others. And a lot of times teachers will go, oh, right. So we can move out of that negative space and into a positive space and how to motivate it.
Love it.
How old are your all's kids?
Mine's 4.
How old are mine?
Yeah.
Our oldest is 9 and we have,
sorry,
11 and 17.
11 and 17.
17. Cool. And then what do you say, Sonia, you said 9 and
9 and then twins who are 6.
Twins who are 6.
Yeah.
Do you have kids, Becky?
Yes. 7, 5, 3, and 1.
Okay. Oh, goodness.
Yep.
I think strength spotting is, definitely has a place for this. It would just, I think, have to be run a little bit
differently. It's more parent focused.
It's more parent focused in that case.
Yeah. But I mean, one of my really good friends, I did Strengths Explorer with her kids in February, whenever I went and visited her. And her kids are like 12 and 8. And it was like, I mean, their minds were just opened up. They loved it. They owned those strengths and they put them up on their wall, and they're both very different from each other. So they're kind of like, they're both caring, but one's like caring with presence and another one's caring with organizer. Like those look so different, So I think that like 8 to 13 range, that's like a sweet spot for this strength. Obviously the Strengths Explorer, of course, but like kids are still want to be with their parents at that age. And if we start, I don't know, I just feel like if we start now, of course, with strength spotting, but then also with what you're doing is just like keeping the language going, starting the language, that then when they do get to high school, and you could probably talk to this, I don't see your name up there anymore, but with Bree, with a 17-year-old, like it's it's really great to have something to be able to see the positive when things are not always positive with teenagers.
And I think when kids are doing this, right, we start to look at differences as a good thing, not a bad thing. So I think there's a real opportunity to potentially minimize bullying. And because bullying often happens not because we see others as different, but we see ourselves as different, and a lack of self-confidence. And that lack of self-confidence is often a lack of self-awareness, right? Or other people coming down, because what happens when we're kids, and I talk about this in my You Unleashed course, is so many times we get lost on our own path and we get detoured. And we get detoured for one of two reasons, right? Detour one is someone really important to us, someone we care about, someone we trust, teacher, parent, relative, best friend, shows us our strengths as a weakness and only sees it as a weakness. And so we shrink. And we stop sort of developing where we're naturally happy and naturally good. And so we continue down this path believing that what is really amazing about us is not so great. And at some point you get that turnover, right? Where this has happened a lot in my courses. People go, I always thought of that as a weakness, or people always saw that as a weakness. I'm like, no, it's not. Bree, you can talk to that because you've been through it, right? And the other detour is you love someone so much, you admire someone so much, you look up to someone so much that instead of being you, you try to be them. And you jump out of your natural ability trying to be them and focusing so hard and mimicking and imitating that person that you lose yourself in the process. And so you're never going to be as successful as that person because you're not doing it from your place. Right? So Bree, do you want to talk about that for a second? What you got from the You Unleashed with that always thinking it was a weakness?
Sure. So I am, my top 5 are empathy, input, woo, includer, and communication. So I am very much like your people person. And for my entire life, I have been made fun of, mocked. I mean, take your pick, because I am a very emotional person. I sense others' emotions. I very easily, I legitimately cry at commercials. I'm that person. And I've been laughed at. Oh, I don't understand why you need to know that information for my input. Like, I'm not kidding when, as we were going through this, it was through every single one of them, except maybe includer and communication, but definitely woo also, was, why are you like that? You're too much like that. You need to stop crying at movies. We're making fun of you because you're crying at everything. You always feel that. And it was never celebrated as a strength. Wanting to know more was never seen as a strength. It was seen as an annoyance, because I still will tell you I'm the person that will ask 700 questions about everything. I have to know. And pair that with the communication, and I have to know everything. And so it's very interesting that for a long time, they were seen as weaknesses. I had a really interesting experience this year with, I was helping out with a conference, and my woo took over. And I was like, I described my woo as like the golden retriever puppy that just wants to be loved and talk to me and talk to everybody. And I was, my friend that I was working with came up and she said, you need to tone it down because you're making me crazy. And I thought, oh my God, I'm doing that thing again where I'm too gregarious and I'm too out there. And I shut myself down and really saw it as a negative. And then 2 months later, after I had gone through a little bit with Joe, I was at another event where I did the exact same thing and took over, and I was out meeting lots of different people. My woo took over. I was being that puppy dog again. And this time it was like, oh my gosh, you're such a people person. That's so awesome. How are you doing that? And I thought to myself, it's because now I'm owning and I'm accepting that not only am I like that, but my empathy allows me to see, now that I'm open to it, when others are really put off by it. Because there are people out there that if you go all extrovert woo on them, they're like, get away from me. And it's being able to, right, and it's being able to really tone that down, but being able to see it, and as Joe said, have a language of it, to know that it is a strength, and to know that being able to see other people's emotions and feel those emotions are powerful. Now, don't get me wrong, I get in my basement sometimes. My input is the worst at being in my basement because I forget that not everybody wants to know everything about everything. I want to know everything about it. So, but yeah, doing that, I literally, it's out here I think, oh, it's right in front of me. All of my notes from the course and really going in and saying, oh my gosh, I had no idea. So very, very, very powerful being able to have
What do you think has changed about you now that you like know and understand who your strengths are? Like, what would you say is the difference? Like, you before you were this and now you are this. Like, do you have a way of describing that? Confidence.
It's a really, I mean, it sounds really like, I don't know, kind of woo woo, but to me, it's about having the confidence to say, not only say, yes, I have number one empathy, but to be able to look at somebody else and say, well, wow, you have number 34 empathy. That doesn't mean that you suck. It means that you have other things that you bring to the table. And then my input and my learner jump in and say, what can I learn from you? And how can we partner together? It's been interesting as we've had this language to know that I surround myself with strategic people. My strategic is like number 25. I have no, what are they? What are they?
Strategic thinking strength. Yeah. Oh, executing.
No executing. My highest strategic, what they're all, see, they're color coded. Right, organizer. And I don't have a lot of the executing things. And strategic to me is thinking, but it's executing. And I'm really good at saying, okay, here's the plan, let's go. And then if it doesn't work, what I love about my strategic friends is they're like, okay, it didn't work. Let's do this, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. And I'm sitting here going, my intellection and my learner and my input all kick in. And they're like, hold on, let me think. And then it's a month before I've actually executed on anything else. So it's not only just the confidence to know that I have my strength, but also the confidence to know that I need to learn from others and partner with people that have different strengths that I do.
So it sounds like it's made some like real transformations and even like relationships that you've had. Like the confidence has allowed you to not just be more of yourself, but engage others in a more confident way. Is that what you're
more confident and more authentic. I'm not pretending at being somebody I'm not anymore, which is really powerful when you are very much the woo and the empathy is a really interesting combination in me, because I really am a quintessential extrovert. I love being out with people. We had a party a few years ago and I looked over at my husband and I said, oh my God, and guess what? He said, we threw a party for introverts. All we have here are introverts. And it was like, imagine, it was actually a very interesting party. And we probably had a good 20 people here of all people who did not really like to hang out with other people. But it was, right? But it was very quiet. And because I looking at it now through a strengths lens, was being able to see there's something about how my husband and I react with other people, that we were able to bring together people who don't like to leave their houses and hang out in crowds to come and hang out and then make them comfortable enough that, oh my God, they come back every year. So it was really being authentic to myself and saying, I like to be the gregarious extrovert, but not everybody else does.
Right.
So, and being authentic has given me more of that confidence to just go and say, this is who I am. And I'm not going to say, if you don't like it, that's too bad, because my room just really doesn't believe that. But how can I connect with you? My connectedness is number 6. So they all kind of input and play. They all play together.
It's an amazing story, Bree.
Awesome. Thank you, Bree. I appreciate you sharing. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you all so very much for being here today. And if you're interested in knowing more, you can certainly always message me on Facebook, or you can send me an email. It's super easy. It's jo at joself.consulting. And hopefully I will be able to work with a few of you and your families and see how we can create a strengths-based family for you. So thank you very much for being here today.